We all thought Shohei Ohtani was going to defer some money, just not all of it.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who's been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and I've now done 5 full seasons here at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm looking forward to number 6. You can follow us on Twitter or whatever it's called now at Locked On MLB Pods. Same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, as we're available on all your podcasting platforms. If you happen to listen to us every single day, we post a comment, please put the hashtag #EverydaySully, so I have an idea of who's watching the show, listening to the show, and whatnot. This is the podcast where we discuss Shohei Ohtani all season long. I didn't know what my show was going to be about today, and lo and behold, we're in our 4th consecutive day of talking about Shohei Ohtani. This is a Cal Ripken-esque streak, but hey, what else am I going to talk about right now? Seriously, am I going to talk about, Paul Goldschmidt wants an extension with the Cardinals? Great, good for you. Max Stassi, the catcher for the Angels, was traded to the Braves. Spent the grand total of 1 day there, was traded to the White Sox. Boom. There you go. Big news. And of course, the news today is the contract that Shohei Ohtani signed is going to be almost entirely deferred. I had a feeling he was going to defer money and everything like that, and that's fine. But my God, he's going to defer $68 million out of $70 million. I mean, he's going to be paid $2 million. That didn't even buy you a full Bionic Man back in the late 70s. And look I'm sure he can get by on $2 million. I'm sure he will. But there's something about the whole thing that just doesn't feel right to me. Something's not swimming here. And for segment 2 in today's show, bringing in our buddy Millard Thomas from Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On National League champion Diamondbacks, as the Dodgers are going full scorched earth to win that second World Series title of this decade. And for those of you who don't think 2020 was a legit title, it was a weird title. It was a unique title, but it was the World Series. That was the World Series played that year, and they won it. You can't blame the Dodgers for winning a World Series when it was an unusual situation. But of course, they've had many other teams that have won 100-some-odd games, and lo and behold, those teams haven't won it. I made the point when I had on all the NL West hosts that before the Ohtani signing, the Dodgers were a 100-win team with lots of superstars and questionable pitching. After Ohtani, they're a 100-some-odd win team with lots of superstars and questionable pitching. It's kind of the same team with Ohtani, sure, and that's great, but it doesn't address the main issue. But with all this deferred money, it gives them some wiggle room, and there's some big people out there. Yamamoto, Snell. There are some other key free agents. Let's see who else is out there. You got Stroman is out there. You have Jordan Montgomery is out there, and they now have a little more wiggle room to sign them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when Millard comes aboard. But I want to bring about the trivia question, which I realized from the different answers that I got, I didn't do the best job of phrasing it. And it was, who is the only person to sign a 10-year deal and win a postseason MVP is what I said. I meant to say World Series MVP. And Chelios got that right, that it was Corey Seager. But a couple other people pointed out Bryce Harper signed a 10-plus year contract, and he won the NLCS MVP in 2022. So that was a situation where I didn't phrase it as well as I could. And there you go. So whichever one you guessed, I'm giving you credit for it. But we're going to keep this moving right along. We're going to talk to Millard Thomas about deferred money. Hey, that's Millard Thomas from Locked On Diamondbacks. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good today, Sully. How about you?
Well, you know what? If I had Shohei Ohtani's money, you know what I'd be doing? I'd be heading right over to FanDuel because I feel like my money would be safe. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, Millard, I know you're a betting man. I don't think you understand what I said. I said that's $150 if your team wins. And I know you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, so there's no better time to get in on the action. If you're worried about the app, forget about it. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season in December. FanDuel is an official partner of
the NFL.
The National Football League. We could have planned that better. As teased, let's get that lower third out of there. No need to have him get him out of there. As teased earlier, Millard Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks, our old buddy, is back. So this is bizarre news that basically the richest contract in baseball history is going to be deferred. On the one hand, you could say, hey, this is how he wants to handle his finances and how they want to handle the finances. Sure. On the other hand, how does this affect the luxury tax? And also, how does this affect the competitiveness? You're supposed to have a luxury tax that some of the lower revenue teams can feed off of. Well, are the Dodgers paying that luxury tax here? Is this a way to sort of sweep some money under the carpet so they can sign a Yamamoto? Is this even legal? What's going on here?
Yeah, all that feels in play. I mean, with this signing of Ohtani and deferring all the money until after he's done playing, the Dodgers are only going to pay him $2 million a year now. So they're going to have their CBT luxury tax basically cut all the way down to just like $46 million. And now they have all this extra money to go out there and spend on the Yamamotos, which is insane because he's the guy that's projected $200 to $300 million. But after seeing what the Dodgers just did with that Ohtani contract, can you be sure any player that they sign going forward or any big market team that they sign going forward, can you guarantee that that player is going to see all the money while they're actually still playing the sport? Because why can't the Dodgers do this the rest of the offseason now, right? Why can't they go out there and sign Yamamoto? Then let me add a Jordan Montgomery and get every top free agents. Let me sign Cody Bellinger and just defer all the money till they're done playing, because why wouldn't that be possible? Why can't the Dodgers live in a world where that's possible? Because like we just saw, it's completely legal to do what the Dodgers did with Ohtani's contract. By the rules in the CBA or whatever, it's an unlimited amount of money that you're allowed to defer for a player's contract. If the Dodgers want to pay him $1.5 billion, they could defer the whole thing until after Ohtani was done playing. I just feel like you said, from the competitive balance and spirit of the league, I just feel like this is not what sports are supposed to be about. I think from a competitive aspect, the spirit of the game, whatever cliche you want to say, it just feels kind of wrong to sign someone to this massive deal, the largest contract in sports history, and then say, you know what? we're not going to pay 95% of that deal while that guy's playing. We're not going to pay him until after he's done, while we're still able to build the super team around him. That just feels like a little disingenuous, because when he signed with the D-backs, or excuse me, when he signed with the Dodgers and we talked Sully,
You wish.
Yeah, I wish. I said the only reason it was digestible, him going to the Dodgers, was because he was going to be paid $70 million a year. But knowing that money's all deferred and he's going to be paid $2 million, now the Dodgers can still add talent around Ohtani. Something about it just feels wrong.
Now, let's rewind the clocks back 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
The Red Sox were going all in to win a championship, and they're on the verge of pulling off one of the biggest deals, one of the biggest trades in the history of baseball. They're on the verge of trading Nomar Garciaparra and Manny Ramirez in a 3-team trade that would send Magglio Ordonez from the White Sox to the Red Sox and Alex Rodriguez from the Rangers to the Red Sox. And it was going to be this massive seismic trade to bring A-Rod to Boston, to get Manny out of there, and to basically turn the page on Nomar, whose injuries were catching up with him. And it was a done deal. Talk about the what ifs in baseball. I probably should have saved this for Friday, for my What If Friday. But this what if has been written about to death. But do you know what killed the deal? It wasn't the Rangers, it wasn't the Chicago White Sox, and it wasn't the Red Sox. A-Rod was going to defer a chunk of his salary so the Red Sox could go out and also acquire a starting pitcher. And the commissioner, Bud Selig, stepped in and said, no. This is too much. This is tomfoolery here, and canceled the trade. And believe me, it wasn't deferring $68 million a year.
Yeah. No.
It was to give them a little wiggle room as the Red Sox were salivating over both Keith Foulke and Curt Schilling. Now, I may have some of the timing of that wrong, but I remember it was a dispute over salary deferments that killed that deal. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say more money is being deferred on this one. And the commissioner of baseball, look at, in the past, and by the way, my fans in Australia, I know, I said look it again, so take a drink. I said look it. But in the past, the commissioner of baseball has, I think, overstepped their bounds, like when Bowie Kuhn stopped the moves of Raleigh Fingers and Joe Rudy to the Red Sox and Vida Blue to the Yankees because they felt like it was bad for the spirit of baseball. He overstepped his bounds. But here, look at, I want to end all, take another drink. I want to end all rumors. I am not an economist and I'm not a lawyer, but something about this seems fishy. How do we circumvent the luxury tax and still just get wheelbarrows of players? Something about this just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, because I'm not even against deferred money. It's just the amount of deferred money that you're doing with Ohtani. I think I would be okay if there was like a limit for like you can only defer $100 million of someone's contract or this X amount of someone's contract. I think we would be okay with that. But the idea of signing someone to an exorbitant, lucrative deal to only pay them, post-retirement, like that's a risk that only a team like the Dodgers could take, a team like the Mets or the Yankees could take. But if you're like the Minnesota Twins, if you're the Cleveland Guardians, if you're the Arizona Diamondbacks, you can't sign a player to an exorbitant, lucrative deal like that and then hope that you get the revenue that you need post their playing career. Hopefully that when your team is worse, that you can still afford to put a competitive team on the field and still pay players to not play for your team, because the Dodgers in like 2030 to like 2040, they have like over $800 million committed to 3 players in Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman to not play for the LA Dodgers. Like right now, the Dodgers payroll in like 2035 is as high as like half the league in Major League Baseball. I just think something with that idea and philosophy, I think there's something wrong with that. And I think around 2026, when the next CBA is up, it's going to have to be something that baseball looks into.
I've never, and I got to make this clear, I've never been against owners spending money. That's what you
we're
want.
We're not against that here. Yeah, I don't
we're
think
not
either
against
one
that here. This is not me saying, and I actually think the villains in many of these situations are, and you and I talked about this earlier, are the owners that sit on their giant Scrooge McDuck pile of money, to paraphrase Jackie Cation, and don't spend on their team.
Mhm.
I think what the A's do as they turn a profit and spend nothing, especially Cleveland and Baltimore, who could have put pennant winners on the team if they had merely a mediocre payroll. But there's something, and again, it's something that doesn't sit right with me.
Mhm.
This is not a economics thing. It's like this feels like you're bending the rules to the point where it's about to break. And I just kept thinking about the owner of the Padres who just died, and
Yeah.
Angelos of he should have said, you know what, sign 5 or 6 more people in defer all of it. Why would he care if he knows that the end is coming?
Yeah, why
Have this,
wouldn't every big market team do that actually? Like what
yeah.
what is stopping big market teams to just say, "Let me sign these players to these imaginary numbers knowing I don't have to pay for it until the back end of their career and hopefully I can maximize the window that I have right now." In theory.
And as a native New Englander and lifelong Red Sox fan, I'm mad that the Red Sox didn't think about this with Mookie
Yeah.
Betts.
They should have, yeah, right? I mean, he's
They
getting
still
half
have
his
Mookie
contract right now.
Betts.
Yeah, and
What?
he's getting half his contract right now deferred by the Dodgers. So it's like there's no reason why the Red Sox couldn't have done that. But even if you're a Dodgers fan, like, is that good for the LA Dodgers? Like in the moment, it's good. In the short term, it's good. But over the long term, once Otani's in his late 30s and he's not living up to the contract that he's currently playing for, or once you're post playing of the Mookies, the Freddies, and the Otanis, and you're like, man, our payroll for guys who aren't playing is as high as the guys we want to play for the Dodgers. Like, I don't know at one point do those crossroads meet and you're like, this was not good business. And if you're the Dodgers and you don't end up winning a World Series over the next few years, it could be 2 decades of turmoil depending on how much money the Dodgers decide to kick down the line. So I think from the Dodgers perspective, from small market team perspective, I think from almost every side, we have to come back and look at this deferred money. And like we're saying, neither one of us are anti-spending money. I don't think either one of us are even anti-deferred money. I just think when you see $680 million of deferred money, it feels a little bit different as opposed to some of those other contracts we see in baseball.
There are 2 aspects to the luxury tax that
Mhm.
has to work. If you pay over a certain threshold, you've got to throw some money into a pot that paid through the luxury tax. And conversely, the teams that accept luxury tax money should be audited to show that they're using that money on players. We're on, whether it's free agency or player development, they have to show that it's being reinvested into the team, not reinvested to the owner's pockets, not reinvested to this, that, or the other thing. The purpose of that is to reinvest it into the 40-man roster, or at the very least be able to use it for player development. But I think it should be used. I think there should be an audit to show that you're using whatever money you get for that on player salaries, on moves and whatnot. Well, it's tough to have that pot
Mhm.
if the team that just signed someone for 70 million tomatoes is only going to pay as if it was a $2 million. $2 million was like what the superstars were making in the 80s. That's what like Jim
Mhm.
Rice and Mike Schmidt would get. I remember when Kirby Puckett and Ricky Henderson broke the $3 million barrier in the early 90s. Like, oh my God, 3. But now Shohei Ohtani is saying, oh man, if only I can make $3 million a year. Like, look, it's good business for Ohtani because we
Yeah.
all know he's going to make piles of money in endorsements and everything like that. And we also know that you can live on a few million a year.
Mhm.
And when he's an old man with his grandchildren bouncing on his knee, and he's looking at all the MVPs he's won and the one ring, he'll be able to say, and there's $68 million coming this year, boy.
Yeah.
And hopefully
Absolutely
inflation,
insane.
for him won't be so horrible. But there's something about this that feels fishy because it flies in the face of the luxury tax, and is the exact sort of thing that could help blow up the collective bargaining agreement that will be up in just a couple of years.
Yeah, and it probably should. Otani, I mean, even with inflation, I mean, even 10 years from now, if someone's going to be offered $68 million annually, like he's still probably going to be the highest paid player post retirement because I still don't know if we're going to see MLB salaries creep up to 70 million annually. I know we got some guys at 40 to 45, but 70 feels crazy. And I just don't know if we'll ever get to that point. So that's even crazier to think Otani post playing could still be the highest paid player in the sport. But from a small market perspective, I just think that's really where we're gonna have to buckle down and see from the CBA perspective, because I always felt like baseball was one of the better sports in terms of parity. Because yes, big market teams are always gonna have an advantage, but you saw a team like the Minnesota Twins with Carlos Correa. I always thought if small market teams were willing to offer any free agent the contract that they wanted, like you could go out there and acquire any superstar you want on the free agent market, if you give them the deal that they're looking for. But now you're going to have teams like the Dodgers, teams like the Yankees, teams like the Mets. It's like we can just double the offer that you're going to put out and not even have to pay it for another 20 years and then continue to add the rest of the superstars in that free agent pool. I just don't know how you can close the gap now if you're a small market team, if you're a team like the Kansas City Royals, the Oakland A's. Like, you do need to spend money. You do need to get more competitive from that standpoint, but there's no world where you could match up and say, I can give this player X $500 million and not pay it at all during his playing career. I just don't know how you can close the gap between the small market teams and the big market teams in terms of the financial flexibility that those two canvases seem to have right now.
Meanwhile, it's the Diamondbacks who are the defending National League champions.
That's
And
fair.
I'm making my pick right now. Diamondbacks, Tampa Bay, World Series. Put it down. Put it down.
Tampa
Write it.
Bay.
Write it in ink. All right. Hey, Millard Thomas, tell people where they can listen to your terrific show.
Hey, follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram, for the podcast handle. And please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube and wherever you stream your podcasts.
And by the way, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts like Millard on Locked On, plus the national shows like me, covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That was Millard Thomas. There are going to be so many small market teams that are going to be crying bloody murder about this, and I get it. I get it. Just it just doesn't. There's something about it just doesn't land right. This is not how we're supposed to do the luxury tax. But alas, we're going to see what's going to happen, and we're going to see if the commissioner is okay with it. And we're going to see if the other teams are going to be okay with it. And the point I was making over the weekend stands. It remains. If you are Arizona, if you are teams that are trying to contend, if you're the Giants or you're the Padres, don't worry about the Dodgers. Don't worry about them. Your job is to make the postseason. That's all you're supposed to do, and hope you catch them on a bad moment. Now, of course, I am not anti-Dodger. I want to see the Dodgers win, and there comes a point where you sometimes have to go scorched earth to win it. The Red Sox went scorched earth in 2004. The Yankees went scorched earth in 2009. And sometimes you just got to push all the chips in and see what you got and see how it will all play together. So the Dodgers have put themselves in a World Series or bust situation. And with additional wiggle room, especially if they sign Yamamoto. I still think Yamamoto is going to sign with San Francisco, but then again, I've been wrong about everything so far. So what the hell do I know? So I guess assume everyone's going to sign with LA and just defer their money. Maybe that's what's going to happen. So there it is. Go drink again. We're going to see what happens, but it brings us to our trivia question. The trivia question is the poster child of deferred money is, as always, Bobby Bonilla. It's brought up every year. I brought up the point before that I believe Bobby Bonilla getting the deferred money was smart for the Mets when they did it. It was a smart move. Absolutely it was. It gave them the wiggle room to acquire Mike Piazza and put together the 2000 pennant winner. Trivia question is this. When the Mets traded Bobby Bonilla. Who did they trade him to? And who did they get back? Name one of the players they got back for him. So that's Bobby Bonilla. Where was he traded to from the Mets? And who was one of the players they got back? But that's your trivia question. Put it on the bottom there. And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Quick reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts at Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Thanks so much, Millard Thomas. Thanks so much for listening to us. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.